Hello, welcome to another interesting episode of the program Sports Preview. And we've been serving you better, making sure that we give you all of the information coming from the beautiful world of football with Premier League actions always topping the chart. On today's episode, we're looking at the FA Cup. It's interesting to look at all of the fixtures coming through in the FA Cup because some of the big wigs are playing the game on Saturday. Mansfield will take on Arsenal. It will be Wrexham up against Chelsea, and there'll be Newcastle in an all Premier League affair up against Manchester City. So on this episode, myself and CI Zura alongside Chiwendo will make sure that we do justice. We'll be looking at these three games and the possible outcome of the games. Don't forget that the program is partly sponsored by our friends at MaxBet. What we want to do is to check where the biscuit will be breaking from in these fixtures. Starting from my immediate right, I have CI Zoro and also Chiwendo. Chiwendo, you look beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to today's episode. I told you the episode is probably sponsored by friends at MaxBet. So we're looking at the FA Cup. Very well. Arsenal is still in the running for a quadruple in the final of the Carabao Cup, in a very fine situation in the FA Cup. Make sure that they came out tops in the Champions League. In fact, as at on Wednesday, they were Wednesday winners of the Brighton and Hove Albion. Even as Fabian Hosella had his complaint about the kind of game that Arsenal is beginning to play, time wasting tactics and all of that. But all it takes to be a champion is to grind out those important points in games. Mansfield will take on Arsenal in an interesting encounter. In fact, I feel like Mansfield is no match for Arsenal. Not today, not anytime soon. But we know how some games can, deal of banana peel. We must always anticipate because it's football. We cannot tell how things will pan out. I want to get your honest opinion about this particular game.
I think it's a done and dusted thing for us because the way they are going in the league in a comfortable situation right about now. I know a lot of people will say it's not Arsenal. We know that, but I think this season they have never been this equipped under Mikel Arteta. Their starting 11 and their reserve. They are players that come into the game and they make major impact in the game. So I think this season, Mikel Arteta wants to, all these critics, he wants to shut them up. And that's what is happening. I think for me, they have it going for them. But I'm not expecting them to win 4 trophies, but they should go for the major ones. Champions League, Premier League is not going to be bad. Carabao Cup, of course, we've seen it over and over again. FA Cup is a specialist. We know Mikel Arteta is a specialist of FA Cup. So I think that should not be. I prefer that he rests his player because, next week the Champions League is up. There are going to be serious games, Carabao Cup. A lot of things will be happening. So I think he should just rest his first team. The reserves are also good. They are not bad. But for me, I think Arsenal is doing a good job this season. Of course, there will be challenges one here and there, but I just know that they are beginning to get themselves intact and going for a trophy this season. I believe they are going to win major trophy. Not one, but major trophy. But one is not even bad.
Okay, major trophy for Arsenal, and they say in second 11, or just the reserve team can do the deal. But let's not forget that Mansfield came out in the FA Cup for 2-1 winners over Burnley, and that will be a very, very major talking point, especially considering the fact that Burnley are playing the Premier League. And if a team from the League One can do it against Burnley, a tough more. That speaks volume.
It doesn't speak any volume. Burnley is not doing well in the league. If Mansfield comes to the Premier League, he can still do the same thing. So I don't think we should use the game against Burnley to actually rate them. No.
Okay, CI Zoro, if you look at these two teams head-to-head wise, they've not played in the last decade. And that puts it's one of those games that you have to prepare just without enough data to say You can only rely on head to head against what they've done in their games that you've seen, clips. But you cannot say against Arsenal, this is how they approach our kind of game. Does that worry you for Ateta?
Okay, so basically, I don't think he does because let's check last three Arsenal matches. They've had three wins consecutively. If we judge by last four, then three wins and one draw. If we judge by last five, they've really had four wins straight up and just one draw. So they're doing well as far as I'm concerned. Now, Arsenal is almost in every competition at the point, still active in most competitions, very vital competitions. And I feel like Arteta is doing a good job so far. Having won their two last Premier League matches, I feel he's doing a good job so far. There is still hope for them, you know. And when I mean hope, in all ramifications, both in the league, outside the league, you know, even at the Champions League level at this particular point, where I'm seeing them. But then, you cannot write off a small team anytime. Uh, this team hasn't been very active. What do I mean? In their last three matches, it's been terrible because they have one loss, two draws. If you judge by four, they have two losses and then two draws. It's not a fantastic scoreline at all. It's not a fantastic thing to have. Now with that, they probably might come in aggressive, but Arsenal still has the upper hand in winning. Why? Because Arsenal has one of the best in terms of every single wing, and then Arsenal, except Arsenal comes into this match relaxed, I think Arsenal has an opportunity to sweep them away, but they shouldn't ride them away.
Okay, opportunity to sweep them away and make sure they do not underrate that comes at a cost in football. That takes us away from that fixture. Let's look at Wrexham up against Chelsea. An interesting fixture anytime, any day. In fact, these two teams, they've met two times in recent times, in 2023 and in 2024. Wrexham lost 5 goals to nothing to Chelsea in 2023. That's in the club friendly. And in 2024, it's ended 2-2 between Chelsea and Wrexham. And we must also agree that if you're looking at form in the championship, Wrexham are in a very good form. In fact, winning 4 out of the last 5 they've played, and Chelsea's inconsistency stinks. Chelsea, they've been terrible with being consistent in the league, and elsewhere we saw them draw against Leeds United, get a 4-0 win over Hull City in the FA Cup, and they drew with Burnley that we just talked about now, and losing after that draw with Burnley to Arsenal, and we just saw them draw Pedro with his first Premier League hat-trick. That was on Wednesday to help Chelsea come from behind to beat Aston Villa 4-1. Liam Rezono has failed in one thing, to keep this team consistent. And I feel like if you can't stay consistent as a team, you might not know what you're up against. And Wrexham, if you look at the the caliber of teams, they won 5 over Ipswich Town. They defeated Portsmouth 2-1, and a 1-0 win away at Charlton. Speaks volume for a side that wants to still remain in the FA Cup.
I think Liam Russino, I mean, I'll give him his credit. You're coming into a team that is as young and inexperienced. Either anybody likes it or not. I mean, Gary Neville was saying something that this particular Chelsea team do not have world-class players. And someone wants to argue and say, oh, Kopama is a world-class player, James is world-class player. But if you look at it, this is a team this is not a Chelsea team that we used to know. This is a team that was picked here and there to form a team. For me, I'm not seeing Chelsea, I'm just seeing a youth academic team assemble. Let's just go and represent Chelsea. Let's just be that we have a team.
So you feel like they'll struggle against Wrexham?
Of course, they will struggle. I mean, you want to say West Ham is not a strong team, a team from the championship. No, they cannot pose any threat. Good a thing. I believe that Chelsea can win them. Because, I mean, if you look at them, they are like for likes. The two of them, they both play teams are average team. Sorry to say. I mean, you can pick some exceptional players from Chelsea like Enzo Fernandez, Cole Palmer, Reece James. Apart from that, okay, João Pedro Neto. We can pick 1 or 2 and say, okay, they are above average, but Chelsea team is an average team. Either we like it or not. And they have a manager that is learning on the job. We cannot take it away from him. He's giving his best. He's trying, doing. He's just trying to Chelsea make Chelsea what they can be, because there's nothing he cannot go beyond his ability, and so that is what's happening to Chelsea. So I think they can win this game, but I just feel like Chelsea should not complain when they get results. This is a manager that's trying to do one or two tricks to get them on top. Until they start getting quality players, they'll still be in that same average league that they have been. That's over the past 5 seasons they have been like that. So we cannot now say it's Liam Russell that is his fault, or the players there. They knew and they assembled this kind of player. And what do you want? You want magic? No. I think they can win the game, but I mean they are nothing to write home about.
Nothing to write home about Chelsea. Inconsistency is what you've been hammering on. Liam Rizzo, I feel like these are games where he should prove who he is. He was criticized greatly for that kind of costly final loss to Arsenal about his defensive approach to that game. But against Wrexham, what are you expecting?
Okay, so Liam is just like you said, an average coach, and he's learning on the job. As far as I'm concerned, I really do not get it up till now why the owners of the club decided it was going to be, for any reason, a learning on the job kind of coach to
And
be
the
on
last
that
season, they
particular
have
club.
a contract.
You know,
How many managers have been able to stay till the end of those lengthy
you know.
contracts?
So the thing there is, the people Chelsea is going against has 3 wins straight up, and one. As a matter of fact, 4 wins and then 1 draw in their last 5 matches. And Chelsea has been very consistent. I would agree with that. But I would equally tell you that Chelsea might not have the entire kind of players every other team would want to, every other so-called big team would want to. But then those players you said was assembled from I beg your pardon. Most of them delivered. As a matter of fact, they delivered. They became the world champions through those players. I really don't want to go there. But then Chelsea has a very difficult mentality when coming into this kind of match, and that is where I have a problem. If Chelsea would come into this match like the way they would come into even the Champions League match, then Chelsea probably has an upper hand in winning this match flawlessly. And by flawlessly, check Chelsea's last match, 4 wins against Aston Villa, who is up there above Chelsea in the Premier League table. 4 good goals and a hat-trick. It makes a lot of sense to me. Why? Because I feel Chelsea came into that particular match the way they should have come into any very competitive match, and that's they flop when they come into the match casually. Even before Rezonoa, whenever Chelsea comes into the match, like they get to flop and flop woefully. So if they really want to survive this, you really have to come into this match with that fierceness, if there's anything like that, just to make sure that they clinch to this, because it's as important as anything. We're not winning the Premier League, we all know that. We're not even on that list. And then, but we should have something at the end of the season. That's what we're looking for.
Something at the end of the season, maybe an FA Cup could bear the card, but it's still a long way out because we have the likes of Newcastle, City, Arsenal, all walking around there. Newcastle United plays host to Manchester City, and that one will be at the St. James's Park. In fact, it's important to note that Newcastle United not in the best place where they would want to be.
But they did a wonderful job, though.
Yeah,
winning 2-1 on red card.
Beating
City.
Manchester United.
2
goals to 1 with a man down on Wednesday. An interesting thing to do as a unit. But then we must also look at the form that they've been on in the last 5 games. City were 4-0 winners in 2025. Newcastle won 2-1 in the Premier League in the first fixture. It was City who won at St. James's Park 2 goals to nothing. And City again in the EFL Cup 3-1. And after Eddie made a lot of statements about how he would approach the game differently in the Premier League, he was well beaten 2 goals to 1. And that's not far off. If you can remember, it was just on the 21st of February here in 2026. So that brings me to what the form for City is looking like. In fact, in the last 5, they managed just 1 draw, and that was that draw against Nottingham Forest. They went ahead in that game twice, but they couldn't see it off. But we know that Newcastle, they've struggled, winning 6-1 in the Champions League against Karabakh, And we also saw what happened when City beat them 2-1 in the Premier League. Then Newcastle got a 3-2 win in the Champions League fixture against Carabao to make sure that they secure that place in the round of 16 of the Champions League. But losing to Everton led to the goalkeeper being sent to the bench for Liverpool for Aaron Ramsdale. And we saw how it looked like it paid off when they were 2-1 winners over Manchester United with 10 men in that particular fixture. I feel like the way City are beating Eddie Hobie and Newcastle in recent times, this game should be a must-win for Newcastle to say, look, we are not at all.
I mean, against the Newcastle team who is struggling, it's going to be difficult. But I think that's the toughest game in the FA Cup this weekend that we're going to see. Because, I mean, Manchester City will be trying to get something. I mean, last season they didn't win anything. This season, it's looking like the Premier League has been slipped off their fingers. And the Champions League, I mean, we can look at it and say the chances of Manchester City being in the Champions League to even get to the final is slim because of what's going on with them. So I think they just have a chance of winning a silverware with the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. And so I think Pep Guardiola will be taking it very, very serious. I want to give it to Manchester City, but my heart will give it to Newcastle.
Hearting with Newcastle wanting to leave it for Manchester City because nobody will understand that he should be ending the season with a silverware, at least with the addition of Mike Gahey and, of course, Antoine Semenyo to make sure that that squad comes good. We're hearing news about Rodri to Real Madrid, and it's looking like money is involved could make that move not materialize. But let me just get over to you about this particular FA Cup fixture where we look at Newcastle United up against Manchester City. Hobie, I Pep Guardiola yet again. I feel like it's for the fourth time this season. Not easy at all.
Now let's look at it this way. Yeah? First of all, Manchester City has always had an upper hand against Newcastle. You know, and this season alone, Manchester City has beaten Newcastle 3 times straight. Right? If I'm not mistaken. Now, coming into this particular match, we all have seen Newcastle this season, and Newcastle is not a team to reckon with. What's the word? Newcastle has proven that we might win us, but before you win us, you will
Sweat it
give
out.
a lot of hard work towards that. I was impressed with Newcastle against Manchester United, and it was as at the 80 something minutes, it was still a 1-1 draw. You understand? It was still a 1-1 draw. I think we saw it that day. Now, moving forward, before you call it a day, Michael Carrick had his first loss of the season. Very specific. Now, Newcastle will go into that particular match with every single thing because they need to win, at least to clear those 3. It can't be 4 straight loss.
And what a way to do it if they can in an FA Cup knockout stage. We'll see what happens when those two go head to head. Don't forget the program is sponsored by our friends at Maxbet. But let's get to that point where I would want to know, especially with the Newcastle City game, where just saying this how it's going to go doesn't mean it's exactly how things will go in that way. But if you are to say, well, who do you think will be coming out? What's your take on Newcastle and City?
I want to give it to Manchester City, but like I said, I just have a soft spot for Newcastle because I mean they are sinking, but at the same time, when you just write them off, they come back to tell you that they are still part of the team. They are still part of the EPL big boys. I mean, the self-acclaimed big boys because they've not yet gotten it. Just like Tottenham Hotspur, we want to always roast that muscles and say, "Oh, we are part of the big boys because they won the Europa League." But I mean, that's the level Newcastle is trying to get to. But I still believe that they have a chance to win against Manchester City. I'm giving it to them.
All of that is dealt terribly.
But we saw Arsenal on Wednesday.
Tottenham is not doing bad.
Not entirely. So what's your take on that fixture?
I feel it's going to, favor Manchester City, but they will give it a run for their money.
Okay, City at the end of the day, is having an upper hand in the studios. You can be a part of this conversation. All you need to do is to make sure that you like, subscribe. Also, you can drop a comment of where you think it should be going to and why. That's what we want you to do. And so this is it. You can be a part of that conversation here on Brewer Community Voice. Interestingly, I must thank you very well for your in-depth analysis, Chewendo. And so, CISO, thank you for those insightful analysis that you brought to the fore. My name is W. I'm saying adios.